The emergency alarm blared through the central command hub of Outpost 7. Red lights flashed across the monitoring stations as technicians scrambled to verify the sensor readings. Officer Trell's 4 eyes widened as he stared at the display, his gray fingers trembling slightly as they danced across the control panel. "Confirm this reading," he ordered, his voice tight. "Run a full diagnostic." The junior technician's skin paled to a light blue. "Sir, I've run it 3 times. The signature is unlike anything in our database." Trell looked up at the massive view screen dominating the far wall. The unknown vessel appeared there, sleek, angular, with strange protrusions and markings that matched no known species in the Galactic Council records. Its hull was dark, absorbing rather than reflecting the light of the nearby star. Most concerning were the energy readings, power levels that shouldn't be possible in a ship of that size. "Send the alert to High Command. Priority Alpha." Trell's secondary heart began beating faster, a biological response to danger his species had evolved over millennia of space travel. "And get me Admiral Vox." Within hours, the Creel Empire's response fleet assembled near the border of their territory. 12 warships formed a defensive line while scout vessels maintained a safe distance from the unknown craft. In the flagship's command center, Admiral Vox reviewed the incoming data with growing concern. "It's just sitting there," he muttered, his leathery face creasing with confusion. "No attempt to move deeper into our space, no communication attempts." His second-in-command, Commander Pax, leaned forward. "Perhaps their systems are damaged. They might be adrift." "With power readings like that?" "No." Vox shook his head. "This is deliberate. A show of force, perhaps, or they're scanning us." The doors to the command center hissed open as representatives from the Galactic Council entered. 5 different species, each with their own concerns and agendas. The tallest, Ambassador Lux of the Glynn Confederation, spoke first. "Admiral, what are we dealing with?" Vox gestured to the holographic display. "Unknown vessel, unknown origin. Its design suggests advanced weapons capabilities, though they remain inactive. We've attempted standard greeting protocols on all frequencies. No response." The smallest counselor, Dex of the Myth Alliance, chittered nervously. Could it be the old ones returning? The prophecies spoke of strange ships from the void. "Let's not jump to superstition," Vox replied sharply. "This is a physical vessel with measurable properties, not a myth." While the council members debated, a junior officer approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we've completed the deep scan. The ship's hull contains materials not in our database, and we've detected life signs inside." "What kind?" Vox asked. We're not sure, sir. The biological patterns don't match anything we've encountered before. They appear to be carbon-based, oxygen-breathing, but with unusual resilience to radiation. And they're warm. Very warm." The room fell silent. New species were rare in the charted galaxy. Most civilizations had been known to each other for thousands of years. The discovery of an advanced spacefaring race that no one recognized was unprecedented. Ambassador Lux broke the silence. "We should approach with caution but openness. If they possess technology beyond our understanding, hostility would be unwise." Admiral Vox wasn't convinced. "My duty is to protect Creel space. An unknown vessel with superior firepower is an unacceptable risk." He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare a warning shot. Target an empty region of space near their position." Before the order could be carried out, the ship's sensors blared again. "Sir, the vessel is moving." All eyes turned to the view screen as the mysterious ship slowly changed position, adjusting its orientation. A soft blue light began pulsing from its forward section. "They're charging weapons," someone shouted. "Defensive positions," Vox ordered, but the tactical officer shook his head. "Sir, it's not a weapon signature. I think it's a communication attempt." The blue light pulsed in a distinct pattern, repeating every few seconds. The computer began analyzing it. breaking down the mathematical sequence. It's a prime number sequence, the communications officer realized. Basic universal language. As they watched, the sequence changed, becoming more complex. Then, to everyone's shock, their own communication displays activated with a message in clear galactic standard. Greetings from the human starship Dauntless. We apologize for our unannounced arrival in your territory. Navigation error. Request peaceful communication. No hostile intent. Humans. Vox tested the unfamiliar word. What sector do they come from? No one had an answer. The message repeated, adding, Captain Jack Miller commanding. Awaiting your response. Admiral Vox looked around the command center at the mixture of fear, curiosity, and suspicion on every face. Whatever these humans were, their arrival had just changed everything. The unknown vessel waited patiently, its powerful engines humming with energy that could, if the readings were correct, reduce the entire Creel fleet to atoms. Respond, Vox finally ordered. Tell them where, considering their request. As the message was sent, he quietly issued a second order to his fleet. Prepare for possible combat. The human warship had been detected in their territory, and Vox wasn't taking any chances. Captain Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the HSS Dauntless, his calm demeanor masking his concern. The navigation error that had brought them into unknown space was unfortunate, but not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem was the 30 alien warships now moving to surround them in a classic pincer formation. They're not responding to our hails anymore, sir. Lieutenant Tom Reed reported from the communications station. His fingers moved quickly across the display as he tried different frequencies and protocols. Keep trying, Miller ordered. He turned to his tactical officer. What's your assessment, Parker? Lieutenant Lisa Parker studied her screens with narrowed eyes. They're setting up for an ambush, Captain. Those smaller vessels are taking positions that would cut off our retreat vectors. The larger ships are powering up what appear to be weapon systems. Miller nodded, unsurprised. First contact scenarios rarely went smoothly, according to the historical records. Defensive posture only. Shields at maximum. No targeting locks unless I give the order. Yes, sir, Parker replied, her hands already inputting the commands. The ship's AI, Diana, spoke through the bridge speakers. Captain, I've completed analysis of their communications. I believe I can translate with 89% accuracy now. Put it through. The speakers crackled before a harsh, clicking voice came through. Unknown vessel. You have entered Creel Empire territory illegally. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force. Miller exchanged glances with his XO, Commander James Wright. That's not happening. Wright nodded in agreement. Should we make a run for it? The Dauntless can outpace anything they've shown us so far, and lead them back to Earth space. No, Miller shook his head. We stand our ground. Show them we're not afraid, but we're not aggressors either. The alien fleet continued to close in, their formation tightening around the human vessel. Captain, Diana interrupted, I'm detecting energy buildups in 3 of the vessels. They appear to be charging weapons. Miller sat straight in his command chair. Raise shields. Parker, give me options. We could disable their lead vessels with targeted EMP bursts, Parker suggested. Non-lethal, but it would show them we could have done worse. Before Miller could respond, Diana's voice became urgent. Energy spike. Incoming fire. A bright beam of energy lanced out from one of the smaller alien ships, aimed directly at the Dauntless. It struck the shields, which flared brilliant blue upon impact. The beam dissipated harmlessly. Shields holding at 97%, Parker reported. Minimal power drain. Through the view screen, Miller could see the alien fleet had paused their advance. He imagined their surprise at how easily the Dauntless had absorbed their attack. They're scanning us, sir, Reed said. Very intensive scans. Miller nodded. Let them look. Diana, prepare to broadcast on all frequencies again. Before he could begin his message, 3 more energy beams fired from different vessels in the alien fleet. The shields flared again, absorbing the attacks with minimal effort. "Shields at 94%, Parker reported. "They're testing us." Miller stood up. "Fire the point defense system. Target the next incoming shot only. I want them to see we can intercept, but we're choosing not to attack them." "Yes, sir." The wait wasn't long. Another alien vessel fired, a larger one this time. The beam was brighter, clearly more powerful. As it approached the Dauntless, tiny flashes of light erupted from the human ship's hull. Dozens of countermeasure beams intercepted the alien weapon fire, breaking it apart before it even reached the shields. "Message sent," Miller said quietly. "Now let's use words too. Diana, open all channels." The AI complied, and Miller spoke clearly. "This is Captain Jack Miller of the human starship Dauntless. We have entered your territory due to a navigation error. We have no hostile intent. We could have returned fire, but chose not to. We seek peaceful communication only." The bridge crew waited in tense silence. The alien fleet had stopped advancing, but maintained their threatening formation. Finally, Reed looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Video and audio." On screen. The view screen shifted to show an alien bridge, very different from the clean lines of the Dauntless. The commanding officer stood in the center, tall, with gray skin and 4 eyes set in a face that reminded Miller vaguely of a reptile. "I am Admiral Vox of the Creel Empire," the alien said, its mouth moving strangely around the translated words. "Your ship possesses technology beyond our understanding. This makes you a threat." Miller met the alien's 4-eyed gaze steadily. "Advanced technology doesn't make us a threat, Admiral. Our actions do. And so far, we've only defended ourselves without returning fire, despite being outnumbered 30-1. Vox seemed to consider this. "What are humans?" "We're a spacefaring species from a planet called Earth," Miller explained. "We've been exploring this sector of space for the past 50 years. This is our first encounter with your empire." "Impossible," Vox replied. "We have charted all intelligent life within 1,000 light years." Miller smiled slightly, apparently not all of it. The alien commander's upper eyes narrowed. "You will remain in position while the Galactic Council determines how to proceed. Any attempt to leave will be considered hostile action." The transmission cut off abruptly. Miller turned to his officers. "Well, it's a start. Better than shooting at each other." "Captain," Parker called from her station, "I'm detecting a smaller vessel approaching from the fleet. Different configuration. Minimal weapons." Miller nodded. "Looks like the diplomats are coming. Prepare to receive visitors, Commander Wright. Let's show them human hospitality." As the alien diplomatic vessel approached, the Dauntless crew prepared for humanity's first official contact with the Creel Empire. Behind his confident expression, Miller knew everything would depend on what happened next. The diplomatic vessel docked with the Dauntless through a temporary airlock tunnel. Captain Miller and his senior officers waited in the reception area, dressed in their formal uniforms. The ship's sensors monitored the atmosphere in the connecting passage, automatically adjusting to ensure it would be breathable for both species. "Remember," Miller told his team quietly, "no sudden movements. Keep your hands visible. Follow their customs when possible, but don't compromise on safety." The inner door slid open, and the alien delegation entered. Ambassador Nix led the group, taller than Admiral Vox, but with similar gray scales. Behind came representatives from 4 other species that made up the Galactic Council. Their diversity was striking. One floated on a gravity platform, another moved on 6 delicate legs, while the remaining 2 were more humanoid in structure, though clearly not human. Miller stepped forward, hand extended in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome aboard the Dauntless. I'm Captain Jack Miller." The alien stared at his outstretched hand with confusion. Ambassador Nix's translator device clicked rapidly before he spoke. "Your gesture is unknown to us. Is it a threat display?" Miller smiled, keeping his hand steady. Not at all. It's called a handshake. It's how humans greet each other and show peaceful intentions. We grasp hands briefly as a sign of trust. After a moment's hesitation, Ambassador Nix extended a four-fingered hand. Miller shook it gently, noting the cool, dry texture of the alien skin. Fascinating, Nix said, examining his own hand afterward. Your body temperature is much higher than ours. Are you ill? No, that's normal for humans, Miller explained. We typically maintain a temperature of about 37 degrees Celsius. The floating alien moved forward slightly, its translator emitting a musical tone before speaking. Such heat would cook the proteins in our blood. You are remarkable creatures. Miller gestured toward the conference room. Please, join us. We've prepared refreshments and can exchange information in comfort. The aliens followed, their movements cautious but curious. In the conference room, a display table showed a holographic map of local space with the Dauntless's journey marked clearly. Food and drink from Earth were arranged on one side, with empty containers for any offerings the aliens might have brought. We've prepared a cultural database for exchange, Miller said, indicating a data crystal on the table. Basic information about humanity, Earth, our history, biology, and non-military technology. We'd welcome similar information about your peoples. Ambassador Nix studied the human captain. Your openness is unexpected. Most species guard their information carefully. Knowledge isn't a threat, Miller replied. Actions are what matter. We believe understanding builds peace better than secrecy. The six-legged alien chittered something that the translator interpreted as laughter. A naive position, but refreshing. Commander Wright directed the aliens to their seats, carefully designed to accommodate their various physiologies. As they settled, Lieutenant Reed distributed data tablets showing Earth's star system and colonies. As you can see, Miller continued, our territory is far from yours. We've been exploring outward for only 50 years, since developing faster-than-light travel. Our navigation error brought us here unintentionally. Ambassador Nix's four eyes blinked in sequence. 50 years. You achieved space travel that recently. Miller nodded. Yes. Is that unusual? The aliens exchanged glances before Nix responded. Most species take millennia to progress from primitive flight to FTL capability. The fastest recorded was the Drell, who accomplished it in 300 years. Humans tend to advance quickly once we set our minds to something, Miller said with modest pride, though it hasn't always been a smooth journey. As the meeting continued, the ship's chef brought in food. The humans demonstrated eating their own cuisine first, bread, fruit, and synthesized protein dishes. The aliens watched with fascination. You ingest solid matter directly, one of the more humanoid aliens asked, without pre-processing. Yes, Miller replied. Our digestive systems handle it. Would you like to try something? Our scanners suggested these foods would be safe for your biology, but we understand if you prefer not to. Ambassador Nix surprised everyone by reaching for a piece of apple. He examined it carefully before taking a small bite. His eyes widened. It contains water and sugar, in raw form. He seemed shocked. Most species find raw water corrosive and unrefined sugars toxic. Miller tried not to show his surprise. Water makes up most of our bodies. We need it daily to survive. The smallest alien, which hadn't spoken until now, moved forward. May I scan you? For scientific purposes only. After Miller nodded permission, the alien held up a device that emitted a soft blue light. It trilled with excitement as it reviewed the results. Extraordinary. They metabolize oxygen directly in their cells. Their bones contain calcium. They can withstand radiation levels that would kill most council species. The alien looked up at Miller, and they're still functioning despite carrying billions of microorganisms inside their bodies. Our microbiome is essential to our health. Dr. Evans, the ship's physician, explained. We've evolved together. Ambassador Nix set down the apple, his expression unreadable to human eyes. Captain Miller, you say you came here by accident, yet your single vessel could have destroyed our entire fleet based on the technology we've observed. Your biology is unlike anything in our records. You carry what we would consider plagues within you, yet remain healthy. He paused. You must understand our concern. Miller nodded seriously. I do. And I assure you, we want nothing more than peaceful relations. If you'd like, I can show you our mission parameters and communicate with our government to establish formal diplomatic channels. That would be. Ambassador Nix searched for the word prudent. As the meeting continued, the atmosphere gradually warmed. The aliens began asking more questions about Earth, human culture, and history. Miller noticed they seemed particularly interested in human warfare, not current capabilities, but how humans had evolved their strategic thinking. You developed nuclear weapons but didn't destroy yourselves, one asked incredulously. Most species that discover such power use it to extinction. We came close, Miller admitted, but we learned from our mistakes. By the time the delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Nix's posture had changed. The initial fear was fading, replaced by cautious respect. Captain Miller, he said at the airlock, the Council will deliberate on our findings. But I believe this encounter may mark a significant moment for all our peoples. Miller smiled. I hope so, Ambassador. The universe is too big for any of us to face alone. Lieutenant Lisa Parker frowned at her sensor displays. The diplomatic meeting had gone well, but something was bothering her. A strange energy signature kept appearing at the edge of the Dauntless's detection range, only to vanish moments later. She had dismissed it as sensor ghosts at first, but the pattern was too regular. Diana, she addressed the ship's AI. Can you run a deep analysis on grid sector 47? Analyzing, the AI replied. A moment later, Diana's voice took on a concerned tone. Lieutenant, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns consistent with cloaked vessels. The signature doesn't match any known Creel technology. Parker straightened in her chair. How many? 3 definite signatures, possibly more beyond our current range. Parker tapped her communication link. Captain Miller to the bridge, priority 2. Within minutes, Miller arrived, followed by Commander Wright. What have you got, Parker? She pointed to the display. Unknown vessels, sir. Definitely not Creel or any of the Council races we've met. They're using some kind of advanced cloaking technology, but their energy emissions leave a trace our sensors can detect. Miller studied the display, his expression grave. How long have they been there? Hard to say exactly, Parker admitted. But based on the pattern analysis Diana's been running, they've been shadowing us since before the Creel fleet arrived. They've been watching everything. Miller's eyes narrowed. Diana, what's your assessment? The AI's calm voice filled the bridge. The vessels appear to be in a surveillance formation. They're maintaining distance but adjusting to keep optimal monitoring position. Their technology is significantly more advanced than the Creel. Could they be another Galactic Council species, something Ambassador Nix didn't mention? Unlikely, Diana replied. The energy signature contains elements not consistent with any technology we've observed from the Council representatives. Miller turned to Wright. Options. We could raise shields, go to alert status, Wright suggested. But that might alarm both these unknown watchers and the Creel. Or, Parker interjected, we could pretend we haven't noticed them while we gather more information. Miller nodded. Let's go with that. Keep monitoring, but don't make it obvious. And get me a secure channel to Ambassador Nix on the Council station. 20 minutes later, Miller was in his ready room, facing Ambassador Nix on the screen. The alien looked surprised by the unexpected call. Captain Miller, our deliberations are still ongoing. We haven't reached. Ambassador, Miller interrupted gently, I'm contacting you about a different matter. Are you aware of any other advanced species in this region? Specifically, anyone using high-level cloaking technology. Nix's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in sequence, a reaction Miller had learned indicated surprise or alarm. No, the Council accounts for all spacefaring races in this sector. I believe there's someone else watching us, both your fleet and mine. The ambassador went very still. Describe what you've detected. As Miller explained, Nix's color changed to a paler gray. When Miller finished, the ambassador leaned closer to the screen. Captain, what you're describing. He hesitated. There are old stories, legends from the early days of our space exploration. Tales of ships that disappeared, colonies that went silent overnight. We call them the Void Hunters in our oldest texts. You think these cloaked ships are connected to those legends? I don't know, Nix admitted. But the Council dismissed those stories as myths centuries ago. There was never proof. Miller's instincts were screaming danger. Ambassador, I'd like to send you our sensor data. Your scientists might see something we're missing. After the transmission ended, Miller returned to the bridge. Parker had more news. Sir, the unknown ships are moving. They've broken their surveillance pattern and are heading toward the nearby star system. Miller leaned over her console. Show me. The display showed 3 ghostly outlines accelerating away from the Dauntless's position. Their trajectory led to a small star with several planets. What's in that system, according to the Creole star charts they shared? Diana answered. The 4th planet is listed as a Creole mining outpost. Population approximately 7,000. Miller felt a chill. How long until those ships reach the planet? At their current speed, 4 hours. Wright looked concerned. Captain, you don't think? I don't know what to think, Commander. But I don't like coincidences. Miller straightened. Parker, continue monitoring those ships. Wright, review everything the Council shared about their history, especially any references to these Void Hunters. Diana, analyze the energy signature more thoroughly. Compare it to every known propulsion system in our database. As the crew moved to their tasks, Miller gazed at the view screen, showing the distant star that was the mystery ship's destination. His gut told him they'd stumbled onto something bigger than a simple border incident. 3 hours later, the bridge crew had assembled for Miller's briefing. Parker spoke first, her voice tense. The unknown vessels have entered orbit around the mining colony. They're still cloaked, but our long-range sensors can detect them positioning themselves equidistant around the planet. Engineer Mark Wilson had been analyzing the sensor data. Captain, whatever propulsion system they're using, it's like nothing I've ever seen. The energy signature suggests they're converting matter directly to energy with nearly perfect efficiency. And I found something in the Council records, Wright added. He displayed ancient text on the main screen. These Void Hunters aren't just legends. There are documented encounters going back thousands of years, but they're buried in historical archives, classified as myths or unexplained phenomena. Miller frowned. Why would the Council hide this? They might not be hiding it intentionally, Wright suggested. The records indicate the attacks happen once every few centuries, long enough for people to start doubting they were real. Diana interrupted. Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the mining colony's location. The view screen shifted to show the distant planet. Even at this range, they could see a strange glow beginning to envelop the world. What the hell is that? Miller demanded. Parker's face had gone pale as she studied her readings. Sir, the planet's mass is decreasing. It's being consumed somehow. Miller stared at the screen in horror. Hail the Creole immediately. Tell them to evacuate that colony now. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was already too late. Whatever these Void Hunters were, they hadn't been watching the diplomatic meeting out of casual interest. They'd been assessing their next meal. The Creole Command Center erupted in chaos as the mining colony's distress signals suddenly went silent. Admiral Vox stood rigid before the main display, watching as all sensor readings from the planet flatlined one by one. Get me visual confirmation, he ordered, his voice cutting through the panic. A moment later, The screen showed a long-range view of the mining world. A strange darkness was spreading across its surface, like ink in water. Where it passed, the planet's features simply vanished. "What am I looking at?" Vox demanded. The science officer's voice trembled. "Unknown, sir. The planet's mass is decreasing. It's as if something is consuming it." The communication system chimed. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Vox nodded sharply. "Put it through." Captain Miller's face appeared on screen. "Admiral Vox, are you seeing what's happening to your mining colony?" "Yes," Vox replied tersely. "Do you know something about this, human?" "We detected cloaked vessels observing both our ships during our diplomatic exchange," Miller explained quickly. "They moved to your colony 3 hours ago. We've been monitoring them since." Vox's scales rippled with anger. "And you didn't warn us." "We tried to understand what we were dealing with first," Miller countered. "Ambassador Nix mentioned legends of something called the Void Hunters. I think they're real. And they're here." Before Vox could respond, a junior officer interrupted. "Admiral, 3 unidentified vessels decloaking near the colony." The view screen shifted to show massive ships unlike anything in Creel records. They were vast, dark structures that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements. As they watched, tendrils of energy extended from the ships into the dying planet, pulling glowing streams of matter upward. "They're harvesting the planet's core," the science officer whispered in horror. Miller's voice came through again. "Admiral, the Dauntless is preparing to jump to your colony's location. Request permission to enter your territory with weapons hot." Vox hesitated only briefly. "Permission granted, Captain." The screen split to show Miller issuing orders on his bridge. "Maximum speed, Lieutenant Reed. Tactical, prepare all weapons systems. This is not a drill." The Dauntless vanished in a flash of light as its FTL drive engaged. Minutes later, it reappeared near the colony, dwarfed by the massive Void Hunter vessels. "Admiral," Miller called, "we need to coordinate our response. These entities are far more advanced than either of our civilizations." Vox turned to his fleet commander. "Deploy all available ships to the colony. Maximum speed." To Miller, he said, "Our vessels will arrive in 30 minutes. Can you hold that long?" Miller's expression was grim. "We'll do what we can." On the Dauntless's bridge, Miller watched the Void Hunter ships with growing dread. The vessels were each at least 20 times the size of his ship, and the energy readings were off the charts. "Tactical analysis. Parker," he ordered. "Sir, these ships appear to be converting the planetary matter directly into energy," Parker reported. "Their hulls are composed of materials not in our database. Weapons signatures suggest capabilities far beyond our defensive systems." Miller considered his options. They couldn't outfight these monsters, but perhaps they could disrupt them long enough for the colony's escape pods to get away. "Any life signs from the colony?" Diana responded. "I'm detecting approximately 2,000 life signs in sealed emergency shelters and evacuation vessels. The rest, the AI didn't need to finish." "Target the energy tendrils connecting the Void Hunter ships to the planet," Miller ordered. "Let's see if we can interrupt their feeding." The Dauntless moved with surprising speed for its size, positioning itself between one of the massive ships and the dying planet. Its weapons fired, precision beams cutting through the glowing tendrils of energy. The effect was immediate. The severed connections flailed like wounded snakes, and the Void Hunter ship emitted a sound that penetrated even the vacuum of space. A deep, resonating howl that made the crew cover their ears in pain. "It worked," Parker exclaimed. "The ship is retracting its remaining tendrils." But their victory was short-lived. All 3 Void Hunter vessels turned their attention to the Dauntless. Dark energy began to gather at their forward sections. "Evasive maneuvers," Miller shouted. "Full power to shields." The human ship twisted and turned with remarkable agility, avoiding the first blast. The second caught its shields, which flared bright blue under the impact. "Shields at 60%. Parker reported tensely. One more direct hit like that, and we're done. Miller gripped his command chair. Continue evasive pattern. Target their weapon ports if you can identify them. As the Dauntless fought its desperate battle, the colony evacuation ships began to launch, small dots of light fleeing the dying world. "Sir," Reed called, "I'm getting a transmission from Admiral Vox. The Creel fleet has pushed their engines beyond safety limits. They'll be here in 15 minutes. If we survive that long," Wright muttered. Miller made a swift decision. "Diana, analyze the Void Hunter's attack pattern. Find me a weakness." The AI worked for precious seconds while the ship continued its dance of evasion. "Captain, the ships appear to coordinate their attacks through quantum-entangled signals. Each time they fire, there's a microsecond delay while they synchronize. Can we exploit that?" "Potentially. If we time our movement precisely to that sync moment, we might avoid their coordinated fire." Miller nodded. "Do it." The next attack came as predicted. This time, the Dauntless seemed to vanish from its position a fraction of a second before the energy weapons converge. The beams passed through empty space, two of them striking another Void Hunter ship instead. The damaged vessel shuddered, its smooth surface cracking in places. Dark fluid leaked into space. "They can hurt each other," Parker realized. "Sir, if we can maneuver them into crossing their fire lines." "Make it happen," Miller ordered. For the next 10 minutes, the Dauntless engaged in the most precise flying of its career. Instead of simply evading, it now deliberately positioned itself to trick the Void Hunters into hitting each other. Each successful manipulation caused more damage to the massive ships. When the Creel fleet finally arrived, they found the Dauntless still intact, though its shields were failing. Two of the Void Hunter ships showed significant damage, while the third continued its harvest of the planet. Admiral Vox's flagship led the charge. "Captain Miller, your tactics are impressive. What are your orders?" Miller blinked in surprise at being asked for orders by the Creel admiral. "Target the damaged vessels first. Coordinate your fire with ours to maximize impact." For the first time in known history, human and Creel ships fought side by side. The Void Hunters, faced with unexpected resistance, began to retreat. The damaged ships moved away first, while the third abandoned its harvest to cover their withdrawal. As the massive vessels disappeared into the darkness of space, a cheer went up from both human and Creel crews. But Miller knew this wasn't over. They'd merely surprised the Predators, not defeated them. Admiral Vox's expression was solemn when he contacted Miller again. "Captain, I believe we need to talk. These Void Hunters, they've been hunting in our space for centuries. We just never knew." Miller nodded grimly. "And now they know about humans too." Aboard the Galactic Council's central station, representatives from 7 species gathered in the emergency chamber. The curved walls displayed real-time updates from across Council space. 6 more colonies had gone silent in the past 12 hours. The Void Hunters were no longer hiding. Captain Miller stood beside Admiral Vox, facing the Council leadership. His uniform was torn and stained after the battle, but he stood tall. "They're following a pattern," Miller explained, gesturing to the star map. "Each attack comes closer to major population centers. They're working their way inward, consuming as they go." Ambassador Nix leaned forward. "How can we fight them?" "Your single ship caused more damage than our entire fleet." "Not because we're stronger," Miller clarified. "We just use different tactics. Your fleet attacks in predictable formations, using standardized maneuvers. The Void Hunters have studied you for centuries. They knew exactly how you'd respond." Admiral Vox nodded reluctantly. "The human is correct. Our military doctrine hasn't changed significantly in over 1,000 years. We value tradition and consistency." "Which makes you predictable," Miller said. "Humans learned warfare through constant adaptation. Our history is filled with smaller forces defeating larger ones by changing tactics, being unpredictable." The council members murmured among themselves. The oldest member, a Drell elder, spoke up. "So you propose we abandon our traditions to fight like humans?" "I propose we combine our strengths," Miller replied diplomatically. "Your ships have powerful weapons and excellent shields. What they lack is tactical flexibility." Engineer Mark Wilson stepped forward, carrying a data crystal. "With your permission, I've developed a program that can integrate with your fleet control systems. It will introduce randomized elements to your attack patterns while maintaining your formations." The Council Security Chief, a massive being with armored skin, growled suspiciously. "You want access to our military systems. After one battle, you expect such trust." Miller met the alien's gaze steadily. "The Void Hunters will reach the Creel homeworld in less than 48 hours based on their current trajectory. How many billions live there?" Silence fell across the chamber. Finally, Admiral Vox spoke. "I trust the human." All eyes turned to him in surprise. They could have fled when they first detected the Void Hunters. Instead, they fought to protect our colony. He turned to Miller. "Install your program on my flagship first. I will personally ensure it works as promised." 4 hours later, the combined human council fleet was assembling near the Creel homeworld. The Dauntless, still showing battle damage, held position at the center of the formation. Nearly 200 council vessels surrounded it, their crews nervously implementing Wilson's tactical program. On the Dauntless Bridge, Miller reviewed the final battle preparations with his officers. "The Void Hunters will arrive within 2 hours," he told them. "We've sent warning to Earth, but it will take days for reinforcements to reach us. We stand alone with our new allies." Parker looked up from her tactical station. "Sir, I've been analyzing the data from our previous encounter. I believe the Void Hunters aren't just feeding on planets. They're consuming the consciousness of the inhabitants too." Miller frowned. "Explain." "The energy patterns during their feeding showed strange quantum fluctuations consistent with neural patterns. They're not just eating worlds, they're absorbing minds, memories, knowledge." Wright looked disturbed. "That would explain why they watched our diplomatic meeting so closely. They were studying us, learning about humans before deciding whether to attack." Miller's expression hardened. "And now, they know exactly one human ship. They have no idea what waits for them back on Earth." He turned to the communications officer. "Lieutenant Reed, open a channel to Admiral Vox." When the Creel Admiral's face appeared on screen, Miller didn't waste time. "Admiral, we need to modify our strategy. These creatures don't just eat planets. They absorb information, consciousness. They'll anticipate our tactics even with the randomization program." Vox's 4 eyes narrowed. "What do you suggest?" "We feed them false information. Make them think we're planning one strategy while actually implementing another." "A deception," Vox said thoughtfully. "This is not our usual way of war, but—" He paused. "These are not usual enemies." The plan came together quickly. While the main fleet prepared their visible defense, a small group of ships would circle behind the Void Hunters, targeting not their weapons but their digestive systems, the parts that processed absorbed energy. As the final preparations were made, a young Creel officer approached Miller with a communication device. "Captain, the civilians wish to speak with you." Miller took the device, surprised to see thousands of Creel citizens gathered in a massive shelter. They stood silently, then performed a synchronized gesture, arms crossed over their chests, heads bowed slightly. "It is our highest honor gesture," the officer explained quietly, "reserved for those who sacrifice for others." Miller swallowed hard, nodding his acknowledgement to the crowd. When the alarm finally sounded, everyone was ready. The Void Hunter vessels appeared at the edge of the system, not 3 this time, but 12 massive ships moving in perfect coordination. Their black hulls absorbed the light from the Creel sun, making them look like moving holes in space. "All ships, maintain position," Miller ordered. "Let them come to us." The Void Hunters advanced cautiously, clearly wary after their previous encounter. When they reached the optimal attack range, they deployed their energy tendrils, not toward the planet, but toward the defending fleet. "They're adapting," Parker noted tensely. "They're going to try to neutralize us first." Miller smiled grimly. "Exactly as we predicted. Execute Phase 1. The Council fleet broke formation, not in retreat but in a complex, seemingly chaotic scattering pattern developed by Wilson's program. The Void Hunters' tendrils missed their targets, grasping at empty space. Phase 2, Miller ordered. The Dauntless and 3 Creel vessels suddenly accelerated toward the largest Void Hunter ship. It was a seemingly suicidal charge directly into the enemy's strongest weapons. The Void Hunters, reading the obvious attack, concentrated their defenses forward. What they didn't see was Admiral Vox's flagship leading 30 smaller ships in a wide arc behind the Void Hunter formation. While the attention remained on the Dauntless's charge, these ships targeted the processing nodes Diana had identified on the Void Hunter's rear sections. The battle erupted in earnest, energy weapons flashing across space. The Dauntless took heavy damage, its shields failing under the concentrated fire. But it had done its job, drawing the Void Hunter's attention while the real attack struck from behind. 3 Void Hunter ships suddenly convulsed as their processing nodes were hit. The energy they had consumed became unstable, creating chain reactions within their massive bodies. One exploded in a blinding flash that temporarily disabled sensors. Another began leaking the dark fluid Parker had noticed before, spinning out of formation. The tide had turned, but the cost was high. The Dauntless's engines were failing, and dozens of Council ships had been destroyed. As Miller ordered emergency power to life support, he knew they had hurt the Void Hunters badly, but not defeated them. The real test was still to come. The Dauntless drifted in space, its engines silent, life support running on emergency power. Inside the damaged bridge, Captain Miller and his surviving crew worked by the glow of backup lighting. 3 days had passed since the battle at the Creel homeworld. The Void Hunters had retreated, but everyone knew they would return. "Status report," Miller requested, his voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. Commander Wright looked up from his makeshift repair station. "Hull integrity at 47%. No propulsion. Communications limited to short range only. Weapons systems offline." He paused. "We're not going anywhere, Captain." Miller nodded grimly. He had expected as much. The Dauntless had placed itself between the largest Void Hunter ship and a Creel civilian transport during the final moments of the battle. The resulting damage had crippled the human vessel, but saved thousands of Creel lives. And our crew? 17 wounded, 4 critically. Dr. Evans is doing what she can with limited supplies. Miller closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of command. When he opened them, he saw a Creel vessel approaching through the viewport. "Sir," Reed called from communications, "Admiral Vox is requesting permission to dock. They're offering assistance." Miller straightened his torn uniform as best he could. "Permission granted. Let's welcome our allies." The makeshift airlock hissed open 30 minutes later. Admiral Vox stepped through, accompanied by Creel engineers and medical personnel. The Admiral looked around the damaged bridge with all 4 eyes wide. "You fought well, Captain Miller," he said, his translator making his voice sound almost gentle. "The Council has declared humans to be worthy allies, our highest designation." Miller managed a smile. "Thank you, Admiral. But I'm more concerned about the Void Hunters. Have your long-range sensors detected any activity?" "They've withdrawn to the outer systems," Vox confirmed. "But our analysts believe they're regrouping, not retreating. They've never faced resistance like this before." He gestured to his engineers. "We've come to assist with repairs. My flagship will tow the Dauntless to our nearest shipyard." Miller nodded gratefully. "We accept your help." As Creel medical teams treated the human wounded, Miller and Vox moved to the tactical room to review the battle data. Parker was already there, working despite her injured arm. "Sir," she said, looking up as they entered, "I've been analyzing the Void Hunters' retreat pattern. There's something strange about it." She displayed a star chart showing the enemy fleet's movement. They're not just retreating to regroup. They're specifically avoiding this sector here. She pointed to a region of space far from the battle site. Admiral Vox leaned closer. That's empty space. No habitable worlds. No resources worth harvesting. Exactly, Parker said. So why avoid it? Miller studied the chart thoughtfully. Unless it's not empty to them. Unless there's something there they fear. The conversation was interrupted by a message from Lieutenant Reed. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. 3 human fleet vessels have entered Creel space and are requesting coordinates. For the first time in days, genuine hope spread through the crew. Earth had responded to their warning with unexpected speed. 6 hours later, Miller stood in the repaired communications center as the holographic image of Fleet Admiral Jones appeared before the combined human and Creel officers. Captain Miller, the Fleet Admiral greeted. Your warning about these Void Hunters prompted an emergency response. We've dispatched the 7th Fleet to your location. The Creel officers murmured in surprise. Vox turned to Miller. Your 7th Fleet. How many ships is that? 117, Miller answered quietly. Vox's scales paled. From a single fleet, how many fleets does Earth maintain? Before Miller could answer, Fleet Admiral Jones continued. We've also reviewed our ancient archives based on your description of these entities. Captain, these Void Hunters have been encountered by humans before. The room went silent. Miller leaned forward. When? Over 12,000 years ago, according to records recently discovered in underwater ruins on Earth. Our ancestors called them the Devourers. They apparently entered our solar system and began consuming the outer planets before they were driven away. Parker looked up sharply. That would explain why they've been avoiding certain routes. They remember Earth. They fear humans. Jones nodded. The ruins suggest our ancestors developed specific weapons against them. We're bringing what we've learned. As the meeting concluded, a Creel scientist approached Miller with a data tablet. Captain, I've been studying the neural patterns Lieutenant Parker identified in the Void Hunters' feeding process. They don't just consume consciousness. They preserve it. The minds they absorb remain aware inside them somehow. Miller felt a chill. You mean the people from the planets they've consumed are still conscious, still aware, trapped within the Void Hunters? Yes. The implications were horrifying. Not just genocide, but eternal imprisonment of billions of minds. Miller's resolve hardened. Then we don't just fight for survival. We fight for liberation. In the days that followed, the shipyard became a hub of unprecedented cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside Creel technicians, sharing technology and ideas freely. The Dauntless was repaired with a combination of human and Creel systems, emerging stronger than before. Other Council races sent ships to join the growing defense fleet. What had begun with one lost human vessel had become the largest allied force the galaxy had ever seen. On the eve of the 7th Fleet's arrival, Admiral Vox found Miller on an observation deck, watching the stars. My people have updated our emergency protocols, Vox said without preamble. Oh. Miller turned, curious. Yes, for millennia, the phrase human warship detected in our territory was a warning of potential danger. Vox's mouth formed what Miller had learned was a Creel smile. Now it is a message of hope. When threatened, our new protocol is simple. Request human assistance immediately. Miller extended his hand, and this time Vox took it without hesitation. The Void Hunters believe they've merely encountered one human ship, Miller said quietly. They have no idea what's coming. As they spoke, space rippled in the distance. The first vessels of Earth's 7th Fleet appeared, powerful warships designed with the forgotten knowledge of their ancestors. Behind them came ships from a dozen Council races, united for the first time in history. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, but the tide had already turned. What had started with fear, a human warship detected in alien territory, had become the galaxy's greatest hope. In the vast darkness between stars, the Void Hunters sensed the growing alliance. For the first time in their ancient existence, they felt something new. Fear.